Hi, it's Epiphany with the Art Prevails Project. I am a poet and an educator, and so I'm going to educate you a bit about poetry today. I know that you've been learning about food security, specifically urban farming and regenerative practices, so we're going to take what you've learned and turn it into a poem. I hope you're ready. Before we start, the things that I want to make sure that you have is a pen and pencil or paper and a computer and something to write on, correct? I know that you have already reviewed a lot of the things that I'm going to mention, but I want to review them anyway. I think it is valuable to review the knowledge and the information and the material that you have before you dive into a poem. And so that's what we're going to do. So in this lesson, I am aware that there are some vocabulary words that you've either learned or that you are exploring, learning connections with, etc., etc. So we'll start with regenerative agriculture, a conservation rehabilitation approach to food and farming system. It focuses on topsoil regeneration, increasing biodiversity, improving the water cycle, enhancing ecosystem services, supporting biosequestration, increasing resilience to climate change, and strengthening the health and vitality of farm soil. That is a mouthful, but that is regenerative agriculture. Carbon sequestration is a natural or artificial process by which carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere and held in solid or liquid form. And urban farming is the practice of cultivating, processing, and distributing food in or around urban areas. Right, so this is the information, the vocabulary that you all have focused on today. And I hope that you have watched the videos, Why Should We Be Urban Farming and What is Regenerative Agriculture? Teachers, if you haven't shown these videos, now would be the perfect time to stop. But if you've already seen them, it is okay to proceed. So you've had a chance to watch the videos, view the map, the map that focuses on agricultural land use, and you've discussed the connections between regenerative agriculture and urban farming and how they combat climate change. If you haven't had an opportunity to do so, again, educators, this would be the perfect time to stop and have that conversation, or allow the students to have that conversation amongst themselves in order for them to obtain information. Cool. You'll be split into groups. If you've already done this process where you split into groups and talked about urban farms being used in the Miami area, that is absolutely fine. You can fast forward past this part. I just want to make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to write down information, to refresh their memory and jog, their mind and the knowledge that they have about urban farming and regenerative practices. Cool. Let's get into some poetry. You've had an opportunity to review the information that you've learned in today's lesson that is again centered around urban farming and regenerative practices. And now I am going to provide you with some knowledge and some information about information that you need to write a poem, right? So oftentimes I will talk to students about what they know about poetry, or what kind of poem do they want to write, or when's the last time that they read a poem, and it'll always feel so distant from them, right? They will act as if the last time they heard a poem was forever ago, or that they've never written a poem, or that, it's just not intriguing, which is fine. But if you love music, then you know poetry. If you have everyday conversation, then you know poetry. Poetry is in everything, specifically in language, right? Because language creates concepts and we use language to communicate. There's poetry in our everyday conversation. So the number one tool that you need in your poetry toolbox is your voice. How do you speak? How do you communicate with your peers, with each other, with your family? How do you talk, right? A lot of times people will write poetry and they will make it, or try to make it, sound like something that they've heard before. And you don't need to do that. You just need to use your voice. You just need to talk. So first and foremost, the first tool that you need in your toolbox is your voice. Secondly, the other tools that you need are your senses, right? Sound, smell, sight, taste, touch. I think that's all of them. You need your senses. What does something feel like? What does something sound like? And this part is not necessarily a bit tricky, but the part that I encourage students to dive into, right? So instead of saying, I am angry, right? Or anger has my blood boiling. Can you tell me what anger sounds like? Can you tell me what anger tastes like? And that is how you use imagery and so on and so forth. And we'll get into that further along. But so we've discussed, you have the knowledge, right? What you're talking about, which is urban farming and regenerative practices. You have that you need your voice, so you know that you're going to speak from your own perspective, from your own place in life and how you have everyday conversation. And then you're going to exercise your senses to make sure that you have imagery and colorful language in your poem. But most importantly, outside of your voice, I think, is your sixth sense, which I like to call your gut. What feels right? Right from an honest place, right from a place that is not trying to be graded for cool points or is trying to be grammatically correct. Write what you feel. And I think that doesn't necessarily have to show up as mushy or sad. It can be revolutionary, it can be angry, it can be funny, right? Write what you feel. And so this is what you need for your poetry toolbox. And then we're gonna get into the poem. Let's get into some poetry. So you are going to start off with a planning page. I'm gonna need you to get a separate sheet of paper. Again, if you're using a computer, a blank slate for you to record your information on. On this paper, you are going to have the information that you've obtained from the lesson about urban farming and regenerative practices, things that stood out to you, things that you know you want to make mention to, somewhere where something clicked for you or moved you. You want to write those things down. Again, when I reviewed vocabulary earlier, we had regenerative agriculture, carbon sequestration, and urban farming, correct? Anything that may have stood out to you in the videos, you want to make sure that all of that is on this page. What this planning page does is help you remember the information that you want to reference in your poem, but it also kind of just gives you a guide on how you want to structure your poem and to let you know that you have information, right? Sometimes if you're already a writer or a poet, you may be familiar with the fact that you'll write a really good line and then you'll be like, what else, right? What more do I want to talk about? And planning pages are often used in formal education or traditional education, I should say, in like your English class, right? When you're writing an explanatory, expository essay or a persuasive essay, you generally have a planning page. Here's my hook, here's what I want to talk about, here's my conclusion, right? You don't necessarily have to make this planning page as formal, but this is where you're going to record all of your information so that when it comes time to write the poem, you're like, I don't know what to write about. You do know what to write about. You know what you want to write about. You just need to be creative and figure out where you're going to start after you've obtained all this information. I want to review the tools that you need in your poetry toolbox. You can also put it down on this planning page. You need your voice. You need your 5 senses: sound, smell, sight, taste, touch, and a little bit of that 6th sense, which is your what? Your gut, your instinct, your intuition, what feels right. So you need your 6 senses, your voice, and then you need the more practical elements of poetry, which is your metaphors, your similes, your imagery, and an occasional rhyme scheme. A reminder that your poem does not have to rhyme. You are under no pressure to make your poem rhyme, but if you choose to do so, that is equally as okay as it not rhyming. So now that you know what you need in your poem, and you have the information that you've obtained from the lesson, let's get started on the poem. Okay, so once you have your planning page filled out and you have all the information on there, I need you to get another blank sheet of paper, or again, if you're on your computer, just a new template. And what you're going to do is at the very top of that poem, you're going to put an ode to or a dedication to. And an ode is a form of poetry where you are addressing something or someone. It is very detailed, it is very specific, it is very direct. You are going to write an ode to whatever element of urban farming or regenerative practice that you want to refer to. You are going to write an ode to your neighborhood. You can write an ode to whatever, right? But as long as it is in alignment with what you've learned today, an ode to blank or a dedication to blank. You can choose either or in regards for that to be, for your title. The reason I'm asking you to title your poem using this is so that you always have a reference point, so that you know again what you're talking about, what you're doing. All of these tools and these practices are going to help you stay on topic, stay focused, and hopefully make this writing process a bit easier for you. Once you have titled your poem and you are ready to begin, I'm going to review a few questions from this lesson. that I think you should keep in mind as you write your poem. One being, what is food security? But when you ask yourself what is food security, I want you to also ask yourself, what does food security sound like? What does food security smell like? What does food security taste like? What does it feel like? And what does it feel like as well, right? Again, what are the benefits of urban farming? And then explore those 5 senses. What are the benefits of regenerative agriculture? And then explore those 5 senses. What is carbon sequestration? And then explore those 5 senses. How do we see this in our local community? And then explore those 5 senses. That is what I want you to explore and dive into as you write your poem. Just start. When you think of a poem, it does not have to, you're probably thinking of something very formal, very grammatical. Think of your favorite song. Think of how you rant to your friends, right? That is kind of what I want this ode and this dedication to sound like. Like you're telling somebody about something that's really, really important to you. Find the part of this lesson that speaks to you and then make it really important to you. Not only will that help how you write the poem, it will help how you view, what you've learned today. Because in essence, in writing this poem, you are expressing yourself creatively, but you are also using your voice to magnify a very important topic that affects all of us, right? So channel that energy as you are writing this poem. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be pristine. It does not have to be correct. It just has to be honest. And I think that is a really good place to start when you are thinking about writing an ode or a dedication to what is affecting you most and what is, I'm not saying most, but is affecting us all on some type of scale. Think about it in comparison to your community, what you can actually feel, what you're actually experiencing, and maybe the communities that are distant from you, maybe the communities of people you love that you don't necessarily live in. How does urban farming and regenerative practices affect me and my life? How do they affect how I grow up in this world, or how I navigate this world, or the life that I live? These are the questions that I want you to answer. Again, the answers don't have to be formal. They don't have to be direct. This is not an interview. Sit with these questions. What does it feel like? And then let it spill onto the page. And that will be your ode or your dedication to. How far from the tree have we fallen? Set blaze and fury to the lungs of the body, sullied the soil, and put plastic lid over everything natural, filtered everything but the water. Brita be not battle ready for the way we burn things past the point of recycling. Left corpses to die for more corpses to graze. Left a grave of seeds, pesticides poured into the pores. This dirt be dead before birth. What of this earth will we leave for those who come after? This disaster we call home, this ruin we've made soft pillows of. How far have we rolled down the hill? Found scarred in the graveyard, stampeded through all the sand in the hourglass. What will come of us when Earth can no longer feed her own universe? Rumor has it, she's been known to remind people when they've overstayed their welcome. For a mighty exit she's mustered storm and snow, famine by force, endings that last long enough for bodies like ours, only to regenerate. And it seems as though those in her cities feel the most pain. Made pots and pans, plant homes in between towers and high rises, groveling for quality like it's a privilege and not a right to live healthily. How do we start a cycle that feeds itself? Because human hath no fury like a planet scorned, and no body can withstand a ground that's unwilling to grow. So, as we exhale our worst into her circumstance, we must help the hand that feeds us most. How far from the tree have we fallen? Far enough that its fruit is out of reach.